Okay, well, let's get started. Hello again, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. We really appreciate it. Today's session is being recorded, and in our topic for today, we'll focus on AI compliance and standards and what you need to know. For those of you who had registered for our first session, we appreciate your flexibility. We had to reschedule that due to an emergency, so thank you for your flexibility there, and thank you for joining us today. We'll go through the agenda next. So our agenda for today, well, I'll walk through some housekeeping items, and then Anthony will go ahead and discuss the rapidly changing AI compliance climate. He'll discuss NIST AI risk management framework and then 4 different ISO IEC standards that have continued to evolve. And then he'll cover some additional standards and some future standards, and we'll leave time for questions at the very end. So let's go into the housekeeping items real quick. And again, thank you for joining us today. We know you're all busy, so we really do appreciate it. This is the start of a continuing series on AI compliance and standards, and our goal is to help everybody keep up with this rapidly changing environment. The session is for anyone interested in AI compliance, regardless of technical background, so you certainly don't have to be a bits and bytes person to be able to follow along. And you can expect the session to last about 30 minutes, and then we'll leave about another 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Everyone will be muted for the duration, so at any time that you have a question, please go ahead and submit your questions through the chat feature. We'll capture those, and then at the very end, we'll make sure that we cover each one of those. And if we do run out of time, we'll follow up with you offline separately. Also, the slides will be available for download afterwards. In fact, what we'll do is we'll probably send out the distribution, and then we also intend to make a recording available on our website. So with that, I'm excited to introduce Anthony Bolan, our speaker for today. So Anthony is a 17-year veteran with experience building and managing security programs. His current focus and expertise is in compliance, but he has a deep background in penetration testing. And so he brings a very unique skill set. He understands directly how adversaries will attack organizations or systems, and he applies that to how he builds security programs and advises on that. And so his passions are security leadership, program development, security program strategy. He has done work in incident response and forensics. And again, he's got a background in penetration testing. Anthony started at the University of Nebraska, and today he serves as Tangible Security's Chief Information Security Officer, and he also heads our GRC Advisory Services practice. Currently, he is a fractional CISO for various organizations, including a publicly traded pharmaceutical manufacturer. He's also a CISO for a blockchain-based platform developer. And Anthony holds several certifications that he keeps current. So with that, please sit back, relax, and get ready to learn about the evolving landscape of AI compliance.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And again, I'm Anthony Bolan. And so let's just go ahead and dive right in. So as you might expect, we're currently in a climate of very rapid change for the AI compliance space. And so we'll start off first here with a couple of measures that have been going on around the world recently. First of all, China back in July passed their interim measures for the management of generative artificial intelligence services. And this provided protections for safety, as well as protections of IP rights. Also, it had some rather strong protections against discrimination by AI systems, but it also required AI to have a bias to uphold the core socialist values, as the document states. So we're now seeing a requirement in law to have, in this case, AI with a bias toward the Chinese Communist Party. In the European Union and in the UK, the EU AI Act was recently approved after long debate on the 3rd of March, but reaction to it was rather mixed by both tech companies and those in the cybersecurity industry. Some felt that it didn't do enough. Others felt that certain measures were prohibitive in certain ways. And so we'll have to see how that evolves over time. And this is likely an area where we'll have some further discussion through webinars in the future. Back in November, the National Cybersecurity Center in the UK, as well as the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in the US, released their guidelines for secure AI system development. And these were fairly high level, but covered many of the same topics that we'll be covering on later in this webinar. So there seems to be some standardization around these core concepts already. Earlier in November, the Bletchley Declaration was signed by 29 different countries, including a large portion of the EU, the UK, and the US. The goal of this declaration was to put forth an effort to develop common standards and identify AI safety risks while still allowing for innovation. Here in the US, in December, MIT released a framework for US AI governance, creating a safe and thriving AI sector. And this also included a number of other white papers which were centered around best approaches for how the US as a whole should manage AI. And then back in October, President Biden released the executive order on safe, trustworthy, and secure artificial intelligence. This was focused primarily around safety concerns, data privacy, as well as workers' rights, and also provided some initial guidance to US government agencies around AI. We've seen a number of US states begin to alter their privacy laws, restricting certain AI use cases. California made a few changes. Also, one bill that I thought was particularly interesting, last year, North Dakota explicitly denied AI personhood in a House bill. That was its only purpose. It's relatively short, and I suggest you look it up because it's just very interesting as its own unique artifact. But moving on, we'll start diving into some of these standards. And so the first one we'll start with is NIST AI 100-1, the AI Risk Management Framework. The document identifies a number of different challenges related to AI risk management. The wide range of third parties, for example, if a system is diverse as something like ChatGPT, you might have someone who's using it to help develop code, another person who's using it for legal review, possibly to their detriment, as we've seen, or someone who's even using it as a therapist. And so the people who use these systems are quite diverse. These systems can often lead to limited metrics being available, and there are inherent and real-world uncertainties with these machine learning and generative models. And so the document also recommends that you must consider a wide range of these third parties and actors across all stages of the life cycle. Who's going to be involved in its inception, its initial development phases? What are their potential biases? What is your training data going to look like as you're introducing this? Who's going to be using it? What are their use cases? And then the document also defines a number of trustworthiness characteristics, including functional safety, security, privacy, and accountability. And so in order to actually implement these, the RMF core defines 4 different categories, and these actually somewhat mirror some of the concepts we're seeing now in the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. The first one is govern, and this focuses on organizational culture and process, the overall structure of the organization and the way it interacts with AI, as well as assessment of these systems. The second category is map, and this covers the context of use cases, limitations within the environment, as well as different types of constraints that may be in place, as well as the impact of these systems on an organization. The third one is measure, and this covers analysis on an ongoing basis of these systems, along with evaluation, feedback processes, and development of metrics. And the last one is manage, and this covers allocation of resources to be able to use these systems effectively, the business's overall strategy relative to AI, as well as different forms of risk treatment for them. Also, the second NIST AI document to be released is AI 100-2E 2023. I bring this up because this covers adversarial machine learning, and it documents a number of different types of attacks and defenses against AI systems. This becomes very useful for penetration testing of these systems. It also is of use for a number of different types of modification of machine learning models as a way to actually remove data within them. This has value for certain things like GDPR's right to be forgotten. Moving onward. Our next standard is ISO 42001, the Artificial Intelligence Management System. This document is a core management system standard, very similar to ISO 27001 for IT security. And it documents a core process for AI project management, and leadership processes, including evaluation criteria for these projects and requirements for risk assessments. It includes an extensive list of controls across 9 different areas, as well as guidance for their implementation. The focus here is on policy, data privacy, risk assessment, as well as management of those same relationships we were speaking of with the wide variety of stakeholders that are involved in these processes. The controls reference a broad range of additional documentation, mostly other ISO standards, some of which we'll be speaking about here shortly. It also suggests a number of organizational objectives, as well as bringing up potential sources of risk relative to the use of AI, such as system fairness, primarily around the types of training data in use and the quality of that data. Again, functional safety, as well as transparency of systems. And we'll dive into that further as we go on as well. Our next standard is ISO 23894, Guidance on AI Risk Management. This document extends ISO 31000 risk management with AI-specific guidance. And it recommends, again, as we've seen from some of these other standards, an inclusion of a broad base of both internal and external stakeholders in AI use and decision-making processes. It advises that assessment of these systems be done continually and actively. This is both due to the rapid evolving landscape that we currently find ourselves in, but also due to change within AI systems themselves. For cybersecurity with traditional IT systems, we often do point-in-time assessments, looking at things quarterly or annually with those point-in-time pieces, making changes accordingly to that, to our policies and procedures, and then moving on. That approach is simply not going to work with AI models given the rate of change that they undergo. The document also recommends very careful consideration by organizations of risks to functional safety, data privacy, and civil rights, as well as the social and environmental responsibilities that organizations have with the use of these systems. From an environmental standpoint, these massive AI models use a considerable amount of cloud computing resources. It can affect climate change. It can have a number of other issues there. And of course, there's a wide range of ethical considerations to be evaluated. The document also provides an example of a risk management process mapped across the entire AI system lifecycle from initial inception to decommissioning, and it focuses on that re-examination and reassessment on a continual basis. Then moving on, we have ISO 38507, which covers governance implications of AI use. And it provides recommendations for human responses to the opportunities, risks, and responsibilities that AI creates. It states that the use of AI systems must be a management choice, brought in from the top down throughout the organization with full buy-in, and fully considering the implications of the rapid change these systems bring, system inscrutability and bias, as well as the impact of these systems on the overall workforce. And it recommends that governing bodies review both IT and AI use on a more frequent basis and with a more detailed technical understanding. Technical stakeholders should have a larger say within these bodies, a larger speaking voice. Policy and oversight of these systems needs to be as strong as it would be for any other IT systems, and humans must ultimately be accountable. The phrase being used now for this is human in the loop. Again, the idea being that throughout this entire process, someone should be able to monitor it, someone should be able to manage it, and if the AI system is making a decision, a human should be able to review it and change it. Organizations must be very sure to assess their overall business culture and values with the implementation of these systems, consider various compliance requirements, and their overall risk tolerances. And then our next standard, ISO 24028, which is an overview of AI trustworthiness. The document opens with a variant of the precautionary principle as a recommendation. Within this context, the principle we're looking at is the idea that a lack of certainty shall not be used as a reason for postponing measures to prevent harm. For example, consider an autonomous vehicle. You're driving down the road, conditions may not be the greatest, and there's a child out in the middle of the road, and the AI system isn't 100% certain that that is in fact a child. The precautionary principle states that even though it doesn't know for certain, it still knows there's something in the road, and so it should be applying the brakes. It should be taking every measure it can to provide for functional safety, to prevent the car from hitting this child. These systems require multiple different layers of trust. There's physical components, again, mechanisms for functional safety being one example of that. Various cybersecurity levels of trust, assessment of these systems, verification. And then also the social pieces, how people will interact with them, how they see them as being trustworthy or not. And again, stakeholders are massively broader than for any other IT system or for any other IT systems yet, right? And they may have very differing values. Again, the driver of a car just wants to get places. People out in the road don't want to be hit by self-driving cars, obviously. A system like ChatGPT is going to have a wide range of different potential use cases. And so chains of responsibility must be defined, and safety and risk reduction must be the paramount focus. As of now, unfortunately, best practices for identification and mitigation of vulnerabilities are somewhat limited. Although this is beginning to change, but organizations must consider, again, security, privacy, inherent biases of systems through training data and otherwise, system unpredictability, as well as risks of implementation. And then we can also mitigate risk through a combination of transparency, system explainability, the idea that we can follow the AI processes through their decision making and see exactly how it was done, controllability, our ability to actually affect that model, privacy, reliability, and functional safety. And then finally, I'll go through just a couple of additional documents that have either been published or are upcoming. First of all, for anyone who's newer to the AI field or just is looking for a little more depth, I recommend ISO 22989. It's the AI concepts and terminology document. It's a good primer for the field. It goes into a pretty solid amount of detail. I highly recommend it. And then some additional governance documents that I would recommend are the AI system lifecycle processes, ISO 5338. And then 5339 is guidance for AI applications. 5469 covers functional safety for AI systems. 27563 covers security and privacy in artificial intelligence use cases. And then currently in development are a few additional standards. 8200 will cover the controllability of automated AI systems. 22443 will address AI societal concerns and ethical considerations. I'm really looking forward to seeing that one. 42005 provides an AI system impact assessment process. 42105 covers guidance for human oversight of AI systems. And so quite a bit to look forward to here. And with that, I will turn it back over to Chris.
Great, thank you, Anthony. And again, thanks everyone. So these sessions are not sales pitches. That's not our intent here, but we did want to share with you ways that tangible security can help. So instead of going through each of these bullets, I'll leave this slide here for you to review as needed. But really what we want to do is make sure that we leave time and we have time here to answer any of your questions. So as a reminder, if you can go ahead and share your questions via the chat feature, and we'll go ahead and take those one by one. And in the meantime, while you're doing that, while you're loading your questions, if there is something that you need help with, or you'd like to schedule a follow-up session with Anthony or any other member of the team, we're happy to do that. So we just appreciate your time here. Okay, let's see. So I see one. Which of these frameworks do you think will become the most widely used?
I would say it's going to be those two core documents, NIST AI 100-1, that AI risk management framework, as well as ISO 42001, the AI management standard. Those are going to be the solid core documents. The NIST one is going to, of course, see widespread use throughout the United States, especially within any government agency, because, well, they're required to. But there's some very solid initial documentation in there. It's only going to expand over time. The ISO standard will, of course, be used across Europe, but it will, serve as a basis for a massive range of additional guidance over the upcoming years. These are both very core pieces that we will see extensive expansion upon as we go forward.
Great, thanks, Anthony. Do we have any other questions? Looks like we might have an easy group here. Oh, wait, I spoke too soon. Okay, next question. Are vendors like OpenAI and Microsoft certifying their products for these standards?
So from the research I've done so far, both Microsoft and OpenAI have been focusing on their own risk management standards for the use of AI within their organizations, but that's also largely because until relatively recently, a lot of these standards didn't exist. And so, again, for organizations as large as Microsoft and OpenAI, especially if they want to have business like in the US with the Department of Defense in any significant way, they will need to begin following standards like NIST AI 100-1. So I believe that they will absolutely adapt to them. There's really no good reason for them not to.
Great. Let's see. We've got another question. What AI use cases do you think might be especially challenging for compliance?
So one that comes to mind is actually related to a topic I was mentioning earlier, and that's GDPR's right to be forgotten. When you have systems, especially as we start to have them that are no longer pre-trained transformers, but we have transformers and other types of systems that are learning based upon that information that's being fed to them, you have user data of a wide range of types being fed in. Although this is also true of pre-trained transformers depending upon your data sets. And if you're subject to GDPR, it is your responsibility under law to be able to remove all of the data you have about a given constituent, any a particular data citizen. And it's difficult to do that with a large scale machine learning model like this. There are some techniques that are being developed to do this. One recommendation is to use a variant of those adversarial techniques that NIST AI 100-2 mentions to specifically target very focused sections of the data model to remove that information. It's still not a guarantee that you get everything though, and Google actually currently has a research bounty out for further thoughts, further different methods to actually do this type of thing.
Great, thanks, Anthony. Let's see, do we have, looks like somebody's working on one in the chat here. Okay, next question. Do you think managing AI compliance can be done within an existing GRC program?
I think it should be done as an extension of one. And so by that, I would mean that an AI system, kind of like we were saying with some of these standards earlier, they need to be assessed from the perspective of management as a whole and integrated into all of those processes. You need all of the policy, you need all of the review, and it needs to be even more meticulous than we're currently doing. So in short, I would say very much yes. Make it as stringent a component, as thoroughly reviewed as a component as anything else you're doing.
Great. We've got another one. So have you heard best practices, frameworks, standards for auditing AI tools and systems? Thinking ahead to AI being ingrained in financial transactions, contract development, procurement, etc.
So unfortunately, I haven't seen a lot in depth on that yet. This is an area, though, that I do expect future ISO standards to cover quite extensively. It's going to be an absolute necessity for, again, the use cases you're talking about, especially with financial transactions. So let me say that I will do some further research on this, see what's new, up and coming, and we'll go ahead and provide some more information on this one as we do updates and provide further feedback after this webinar.
Yeah, and I just I know we were talking about this internally with our team. I do believe is it OWASP that has come up with some specific tests that can be done on AI applications and platforms and things like that. I'm not sure that's exactly what this question is referring to, but there's another perspective there, and we can follow up separately. And it looks like Got one more, at least one more coming here. Thanks for the questions. This is great. Oh, okay. So can you allude on that last statement regarding OAS tests? I think that was the one I was actually referring to. OWASP. OWASP has the top 10 that's constantly updated for, and that provides testing criteria or things to look for when you're assessing different types of applications, web or mobile. And my understanding is that they, at least from our pen test team, that they have come up with something that is more focused on AI as well. Does that sound right, Anthony?
Yes. So again, just to provide a little more information, I'll put this in the chat too. What you're looking for is referred to as the OWASP Machine Learning Top 10. Let me just finish typing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Got that. And so this covers, I've actually just pulled it up in front of me now. It covers a number of different types of attacks against these systems that can be done, kind of similar to that other NIST AI document that I mentioned. This is another perspective on that, but it also provides a little more focused insight onto how this type of thing would actually be executed by pen testers, as well as mechanisms to defend against them. So that would be a good reference from that perspective.
Yeah, so this is something our pen test practice does. They've already been looking at this, and we may do a separate topic on that a separate webinar on that down the road later on. But thank you for the question. And if you have follow-up questions on that, we'll follow up afterwards and certainly reach out to us. We'll put our contact information here. We'll show that momentarily. In fact, Anthony, if you want to move to that last slide, just so everybody does have our contact if they have any follow-up. Great. Here's another question. If we are looking at deploying an AI solution from a vendor, what compliance questions should we ask?
Yep, that's a good one. So there are a couple of different things that I would look at. First, I mean, you could look at it, what types of audit and penetration testing are they doing against these systems, to tie back into our previous question, but also what are they doing to reduce, as I just love the word inscrutability, but yeah, inscrutability within their systems, to provide explainability, another wonderful word, but to be able to actually have transparency in their models, understand what their training data is doing and how these systems are reacting. How are they actually managing it, or are they just taking some other technology off the shelf, looking at various open source models, customizing it to whatever their case is, and just assuming that that's good enough? Get a thorough review of the technology. Look at what standards they're voluntarily complying with. Are they following these best practices? What are they planning to do in the future? I would ask these questions at a rather deep level to have that type of understanding, because again, you need to have a very strong understanding of what you're planning to do what your use cases are, how you're planning to use this within your business, and how you're going to manage it, even if it's a third-party system.
Great. Do we have any other questions? We still have a little bit of time too, so please, if you have some questions, feel free to ask. I think it looks like we may be done. So with that, again, I want to thank everyone for your time, again, for your flexibility. If you were registered for the original session, we had to reschedule due to an emergency. So we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us. Me, the masked moderator here, my name is Chris Gagne. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Anthony Bolan. You can see our contact there. We're happy to take separate calls to answer specific questions. And again, we'll follow up after this. We'll send out the presentation, and then we're also going to, we have recorded this session. So once we finished editing that recording, we'll go ahead and make that available for download on our website, in case you have any peers or you'd like to come back and revisit this. So with that, that concludes our session. Again, thank you again for everyone, and have a great day.